welcome. So I was sitting here in the middle of editing and preparing for a workshop that I'm going to be teaching in the coming future. And I thought, why not take you guys along? I've talked about my process in the past, how I take a reference photo, which I have here, and how my process in preparing that to translate it into a painting. So this is a really important part of my process, especially as a pet portrait commission artist. I almost said photographer, so I used to be a photographer. But yeah, so I just thought, hey, you know what? I might as well take you guys along. I've had a few requests. People want to know kind of step by step my Procreate process specifically, and I can show you how I do. I edit the photo, I bring it into Procreate. So we'll talk about it, but yeah, so welcome, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So come along and I'll show you how it's done. Okay. You'll have to forgive me. I have this propped up on a rock like a Neanderthal because my light is reflecting on that. So let's, sorry that it's kind of wonky. Okay, so here I have my old iPad. This is an iPad Pro, 12.9 inch screen size. This is the very first generation. This is the mother of all iPad Pros, 2017 model. So when I say old school, I mean it. This thing has been amazing for me, and I use it constantly in my art practice. So this is not necessary, obviously. It's just another tool, right? Like we artists, we use things as tools in our process. And so for me, this is my tool for how I handle a reference photo. So, sorry that you can see my phone and everything. I just wanted you to be able to see my face. So anyway, on here I have a app called Procreate, and here it is. I believe that Procreate costs about $20 nowadays. It's worth it. Totally worth it. You can do all kinds of stuff. So that's how I make my traceables. So if you take a workshop with me, I always give you a line drawing ready to go. And you don't have to use it, but a lot of people find it really helpful. So anyway, this is what I'll be using. But before I ever pull the picture into Procreate, I'm going to edit it. You can do this on your iPhone, any smartphone you can edit on, but I have an iPhone and I have my iPad. So it's the same whether you're using the iPhone or the iPad. So this is a photo of one of my sister-in-law's puppies. So they are technically not English cream retriever. They're just regular retriever. They're very light, but they look like English cream retrievers. And so my workshop, I'm going to be teaching how to do white fur. A lot of people seem to struggle with that, and that's something I specialize in. And so we're going to be using this cutie, and I really like how simple the eyes are. I wanted this workshop to really just focus on fur. So I wanted the eyes and nose to be super simple. So this will be great. But what I need to do is crop it. So that's important. So let's talk about cropping. I'm going to use the edit button. So up here at the top, we have edit. Okay. So it's going to bring this up. Over here, we'll be using this in just a second. We're going to edit this photo, the color, the lighting, the brightness, all of that. But first, I'm going to use the crop tool. Now, the crop tool, you can choose the aspect ratio down here. So that's this button here, aspect ratio. And I'm going to choose to have it be the original size. And I'm going to go ahead and crop it smaller. So here's what I want to do. I was a photographer, like I mentioned in the beginning. And this is the kind of the rule of thirds, the golden rule. I always want one of the eyes to be on the third. So those three lines, I want that one of the eyes to be that focal point. Okay. I also really like to tilt the dog's head slightly. So I have to just decide what the cutest tilt is, and also if it'll work. This side won't work. This side will work. And so I'm going to position that eye right there on the rule of thirds. I'm not going to zoom in too much. I don't mind that it's cutting off the ears and stuff because we're really just focusing on fur. This is a great angle. So often when I do a pet portrait, I will tilt the dog's head. You just can't resist the head tilt. It's so cute. And so even if somebody sends me a photo of their dog straight on, I am going to crop it and just little head tilt. It makes all the difference. So we've got our head tilt. We've got our eye, one of our eyes positioned as the focal point. And now it's time to go ahead and edit the brightness. Now, there's this magic wand button. You can use the magic wand. So there's the difference that it made. It just kind of pops things a little bit. And that's fine. If that's what you want to use, great. But I do want to teach you kind of what I like to do. I don't always like what the magic wand does. And keeping in mind my photography background, editing is something that I did extensively. So I'm going to try to keep this simple. The first thing I like to do is pop the contrast just slightly. So it has this slider here. And so you can see contrast is going to, what's it going to do is brighten the highlights and darken the lowlights or the darker values. So I'm just going to pop it ever so slightly. It's like a level 4. And the next thing I want to do is brighten it. I'm using brightness. Now you can use exposure. But exposure's tricky if you don't know what you're doing. And sometimes I don't know what I'm doing with that. So that's an interesting tool. So I like to use brightness instead. So you can go, you don't want to lose too many details going too bright, but this photo was really dark. So I am going to brighten it quite a bit. Keep in mind, we're going to paint this. So we want to create something that we can translate into a painting. So you need to know, what information do I need? What's the most important information on this photo that I need to keep? If you darkened that nose too dark, you're going to lose some of the details. I don't know why I can't think of words today. So let me show you. So here we've got our shadows. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Did you see that? Okay, let me show you. Those go too dark. Guess who loses the detail? Look at that. We just brought detail back. So that's something important that I want to do, right? Look, now we can see the details of the eyes. We can see the nose details. So that is shadows. So when you're using contrast, you need to keep that in mind. I could do this and bring back the nose details, but now I'm losing my contrast between the values. So let's find a happy medium here. Let's call it good. Let's keep it at 4 where we had it. Our brightness. Black point, that also has to do with your shadows. I don't mess with that. Now saturation, I do mess with. Because sometimes I like to make my paintings brighter or more colorful than the actual dog. It just adds interest. So you can use saturation. See how the nose just turned purple? I don't want to do that on this one because this specific class, I really want to worry less about color and more about shadows and values. So for this one, I am going to go ahead and leave the contrast, or sorry, the saturation where it is. A vibrance. Vibrance also kind of falls into the saturation area. Let me show you what happens. It just boosts everything like crazy. So I don't play with vibrance too much. I'm going to leave that alone. Warmth. That is the temperature. So it's either cool or it's warm. So here it is really warm and here it is really cool. And like I said, for this one, I don't want to worry as much about temperature and color and stuff. I could go ahead and desaturate completely. And I will, but I'm going to do it in Procreate. I always give a color reference photo and a black and white reference photo to my students. It's very important to me. But for, not this one. This is our original reference photo. I don't want to do that yet. So warmth I'm going to leave, I could leave it about here. It looks great. And then tint, that's green or red, right? So this is a nice tool to play with. So now we're going green, now we're going red. And that is something I use quite a bit. If somebody sends you a picture of their dog, say it's in the forest or it's on a grassy lawn, you're going to get green reflections and the dog may look a little green. So you can actually use this as a tool to remove the green and add more red to counterbalance it, right? Because green and red are contrasting colors. So they counteract each other. I'll go ahead and move that a little bit towards the red. And then sharpness. Now sharpness is the detail. Let me show you what happens when we completely sharpen. That's great for the eyes and nose and if you're wanting those details. However, if you want to become completely obsessed with every little hair and every little detail, please don't use the sharpness tool. You can use it a little bit, it's fine. But if you just want to sharpen the eyes and the nose, but try to keep in mind that the rest of the fur, you're not going to want to worry too much about. So I'll show you what I'm going to do about that in Procreate. So the sharpness, I can't remember where it was before. We'll just leave it about there. I'm fine with it being a little sharp. Okay, definition's kind of the same thing. It defines more of those lines that we just made sharp. I do not use definition. Like ever. Then we've got noise reduction. That smooths out things, gets rid of the graininess. I'm not going to use that. And then vignette. That just adds a darker area around the outside. You can use that if you want. It was kind of a style back in the early 2000s, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm really happy with this. Now what you can do is hold down on it and it'll show you what it looked like before. Hold on, I think it will. Nope, it won't. Sometimes it... Okay, so I've got my edit. This is one that I did before, and I can't decide which one I like better. I actually almost like this one better. Because this one, we're kind of focusing on the nose, and it's a little warmer. Sorry, I'm not trying to confuse you, but I think I'm going to go with what my heart tells me, and I think I'm going to go with this one. But it's the same concept. It's really up to you how you crop your image, and just remember that rule of thirds. You want to place your focal point, or one of the eyes always needs to be on one of those thirds, okay? So now I've got Procreate on my iPad. I've got my photo ready. Next, I'm going to share it to Procreate. You can do this from Procreate, or you can just do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to hit the share button, and then it gives me options. I'm going to hit Procreate. It won't do anything right now. So now I actually have to open Procreate for that to open up. Okay, and now I've brought it in a couple times. So let's see. Oh, I know why I liked that one. Okay, so this one I cropped a little more square, and this one I cropped a little more like this because when we trace it onto the paper is going to be this size. But that's okay. Let's use this one. That's totally fine. When we go to put it on the paper, we've got to decide what rule of thirds to put it on. You know what? I'm just confusing you guys. We'll go with this one. Okay. All right. So I have my dog, and the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate it. So these are layers. I do not want to give you guys a how-to on Procreate. It's already been done. There are so many like Procreate tutorials on YouTube for free. Go check them out. I'm just showing you how I do things. Okay. So you've got a background. We don't need to worry about that right now. Or ever. And I'm going to duplicate. So to duplicate this photo, I'm going to swipe and hit duplicate. Okay. So now I've got this one. And what I want to do is I am going to blur the one on top. So whatever one you have selected, that's the one you're going to be editing. So this is what I do for my reference photos for my students. So when you take a workshop with me, you're not just getting the basic reference photo. Like I have done a lot of homework and I've put a lot of work into preparing these photos for you. So by the way, I usually use like Unsplash royalty-free photos, but it's really fun to be using like my own pictures that either I have taken or someone else has given me. So anyway, so now you're going to slide your finger and it's going to blur it. Now this is for those of you who are professionals or you are already doing pet portrait commissions and you just want, or you're teaching and you just want a better way to do this. This is how I do it. So in order to help my students to not focus so hard on all the little details of the fur, this is what I do. So I've blurred it. And now I am going to erase just the eyes and the nose so that the next layer underneath where it's sharp is going to show through. So we're going to use the eraser tool and I'm going to make sure it's just on untitled brush or whatever like basic brush. And then you can choose the size of it and the opacity. I want it to be, I want to go ahead and make sure it's nice and opaque. And I'm just going to erase the eyes. You see how that's coming through? We can do a little bit of like this, anything that we would like a little more detail. This is how I find my balance when I do a pet portrait commission. I want a little bit of realism and a little bit of details, and then the rest just needs to be looser. Does that make sense? So this is the reference photo that my students are going to get. But now they're going to get, I'm going to go ahead and group these two together. I'm going to go like this, group them, and let's go ahead and merge these together. I'm going to flatten. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate again. And I'm going to use this magic wand tool. I'm going to do saturation. And I'm going to completely desaturate this puppy. Okay, so now we've got, this is how you see the view. So I don't want to see the black and white one right now. I just want to see the color. Now we're going to save it. But, oh, I forgot to talk about creating a color palette. For this workshop, it's not going to be as important, but just for the sake of showing you because it has been requested, I'm going to create a color palette. So up here in the corner, we've got our colors. You've got the color wheel. There's different ways to look at it. There's the harmony, classic, value, and then over here, the furthest right, we've got palettes. Do you see all these palettes I've created? They're each named something. So this was a pet portrait commission. This was a corgi workshop. This was a commission. This was a commission. So here's a horse that I did. And so I'm creating palettes. And then from these palettes, I can kind of look at my watercolors that I have. And I can see which colors that I want to use. It's just a tool I created for myself. It's super fun, totally unnecessary. So you can hit the plus button. You can have it automatically create a color palette from the photo. I could literally go new from photos. I could pick our dog. And now we've got a bunch of colors. I don't want that many colors though. That would be too confusing. So I do not use that. I'm going to delete that. Let's just create it ourselves. So create new palette. And I like to name it. So I'm going to say, I think this is River's puppy. I'll just call it River. So the mom of these puppies is named River. We'll call it River. And then here's what we're going to do. So you're going to use your finger and hold down on any part. And it's going to grab a color. So let's say for the nose. And I like to pick like the darker area first, because then I know that's the base tone, and then to get the rest of the tones I can kind of wash it out. So there we go. We've got kind of a, we can see, oh, we can go over here to the disc and you can see what color range that dark color is in. That's really, really helpful. So I might pick a color that is got a really dark mass tone. I'm totally using neutral tint for that because I can tell you that neutral tint leans kind of this violet. So now I'm going to go back to my palettes. So what you do is you hold down, go to the color, and then tap there, and it'll place that color square for you. Okay? This is really helpful for the iris on eyes. Like I said, this is not a great example. Let me take a moment, and because like I said, this workshop's going to be about white fur. We're just going to be looking at the shadows and the temperature of the shadows. So let me just show you on a different, let's talk about this cat. This was a workshop I did. The replay is available on my website, and I will link that in the description. But let's say I want to make a palette for her, and I don't know if I did. If I did, I don't know where it went. So I'm going to make another one, create new palette, call it cat. And now I can start building my color palette. Ooh, look at that. We've got like some transparent yellow oxide or raw sienna. And then we'll go to the ear. We'll pick, okay, that's that. That's that. Now we've got a couple of colors within the eye. We've got green, and you can place them anywhere you want. Sometimes I separate them out. So like I'll put the eye colors down here. I'll put the ears over here. Does that make sense? And then make little groups. And then from there, I'll usually pick 5 colors from my palette. I usually keep each painting limited to like 5 colors or less. So I'm sorry, I'm flipping you off. I'm not trying to. Let's go over here to the nose. So our nose has that, but it also has this dark color. What's that look like? Okay. And then just like with that white dog, we're going to look at the colors in the shadows. So yes, this is a white cat, but does that look white to you? Does that look white to you? It's not white. So our eyes can play tricks on us. This tool is just a way that I kind of help myself to see the colors that I'm not really seeing with my naked eye. And totally, like I said, it's unnecessary, but it can be a very helpful learning tool. So even the lightest whites aren't even white. That's leaning like green. This shadow over here, look how dark that is. Look at that. And then it also can help you with your values. So whether it's the little circles up here or down here, that's going to help you with your values to know how light or dark it is. So look at that. Woo, really deep, dark, bluish purple, huh? And then, do you see how that can be helpful? So anyway, let's get back to our puppy. Which one were we using? I think we were using the other one. Hold on. Guys, I confused myself. It's this one. And I will name them. You can name them. So you come over here and you tap on it. And I will call this one. Let's call it Rivers Puppy. Rivers Puppy. Done. Okay. So now I can go ahead and go into the shadows. Let's look at our shadow colors. Okay, I'm going to move this over here so we can see. So here's what's interesting on this photo. This dog was partially in sunlight and partially in shadow. So right here, the sun was shining and reflecting onto its fur. That's going to look super weird, though, if I try to replicate that in a painting. So I am going to have to try to focus on keeping my temperatures the same all the way around. So I'm going to look at the shadow on this side, because the shadow on this side's the same. But you can kind of pick, like, okay, we've got a grayish color. That's warm. Now we've got, yep, so we can easily see what colors our shadows are leaning towards. So hopefully that's helpful. There was a lot of people asking questions on how to make those palettes. So now I can look at my palette. For River, we've only got like 3 colors here. And actually this one's just a lighter version of this one. So we may even be able, oh, and then I forgot I should put the ear color is like a warmer color. So we'll pop that in there. Very similar to that color though. So do you see what I'm saying? That we, our eyes can deceive us. So this is a helpful tool to kind of get past that. Now, this is how you save this. So I'm going to make sure that the black and white is deselected so that I'm only getting this, because whatever layer it's on, that's what it will save it as. So I'm going to hit the tool button, and then I'm going to hit the share. So you've got like all these different ones at the top. So I'm going to hit share, and I'm going to go ahead and share it as a JPEG. JPEGs are the easiest thing for my students to use. If they want to print it out, they can. So I'm going to go ahead and save it to my iPad. Okay, and then now I'm going to make sure the black and white is selected, and I'm going to go ahead and save it to my iPad yet again. And now I'm going to show you how I make my line drawing. So for this, I'm going to have my colored one selected, and I'm going to hit the plus button and just make an empty layer. This is important because we're going to need to turn that off to save our line drawing. So now I've got the paintbrush tool. There are so many brushes. I have brushes I've purchased, but the brushes that come with the iPad are just fine. I kind of like to use a pencil type of brush. They're called brushes. So I like to use kind of a pencil, and you can play around because I want to make sure it's going to replicate what my students are going to be using to trace. You wouldn't want to use like a big fat marker or something thick. You want a thin line that is going to be traceable. So you got to make sure that it is black, and you can just double tap on the black part and it'll make it the blackest black. Okay, so now you can kind of test the thickness. You can make it smaller. You can make it more opaque. And then this is the undo button here. You can also undo by double tapping in the grid area, bump, bump, like that. I'm not going to do it. Well, I can show you. Let's say I do that, bump, bump. I went too far. So that's why I don't use it. And it's kind of hard to do with nails. Yeah. And plus, like, my middle finger is so much longer than my first finger that it's like, yeah. Anyway. First world problems, right? Okay, so I want to make sure that's all the way up on opacity. And like I said, I want this to be easy enough to see, but also easy enough to use a pencil to replicate. I like that. It's a good strong line. And I am going to take the opacity down on this so that I can trace it and see my lines really well. So essentially I'm tracing it on here rather than printing out the dog and then using graphite paper and tracing. I'm just doing it on here. So let's get into that. So the first thing I want to do is I always start with the eyes. Just like when I'm painting, I like to start with the eyes. So you can zoom in, and I'm doing that just so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to simplify. Hold on 1 second. I got to make sure that I have my layer here selected because I don't want to be drawing on the actual picture. And I'm already feeling like that's too big. So just adjust accordingly. But you don't want it too small because then it's overwhelming and you'll be tempted to do too many details. You know, tracing is an art in and of itself. It's not, some say it's cheating, and maybe it is. But the thing is, like, you got to start somewhere, and tracing actually can help train your hand and train your eye. So it's a really important skill to learn. It's not as simple and easy as you think. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm getting the basic outline of the eye and the highlight, the pupil, and then I'll even kind of outline any shadowing. Now, what I'm seeing here, I think, is a hair. It's either a hair or some sort. I don't think it's a reflection on the eye. So that's important to know. But I'm also going to do this because I think that's a lighter area. That's how I achieve such realism in my paintings, is when I trace the eye, I need to know what details do I need, what information do I need to translate this. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do is make sure that I've got like just a few things. This is my map. I call these my breadcrumbs. They help me find my way. Even though this painting will essentially be done with paint, these are my breadcrumbs and my map to help me find my way. Now, it is, with all that being said, and all the discussion around tracing, everybody's got an opinion on it, but at the end of the day, I think that drawing is a very important skill. You need to know how to draw. It's always great to be working on your drawing skills. But if that's what's stopping you from painting, then oh my goodness, just flip and trace. Like, let's get painting. You can be working on your drawing skills in the meantime. I have sketchbooks and sketchbooks dedicated for my drawing practice. I'm always drawing. But I really don't want that to be a stumbling block for my students. The sooner we can get you putting paint down on paper, the better. Okay. This one's a little trickier. It's kind of vague, isn't it? So I want to just try to get... In fact, you know what? When this picture is really dark, all you see is just black. So essentially, we could just have this whole eye be black and just see that highlight and we'll be just fine. I'm just doing that for purposes of being able to see. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm getting the basic kind of outline. And when I do dots, I always tell my students that just means draw lightly. These are lines we don't want to see under our painting, but they're just helpful. And we don't want to go crazy. So if you're tracing, don't go too crazy and do too many details. You need to ask yourself, what information do I need? What information is going to be the most important here? Okay. And now I'll go to the nose. And I'm going to just do the basic outline. I'm going to get my nostrils. I want this to be simple. I'm not going to draw, I'm not going to do this. Because it's vague. You can totally see that, it's kind of vague. I will do this if it's going to be a totally dark area. I'll do that. I don't do it on my drawing. I just do it so my students know that that's the deal. Okay, and then for these, I'm not super worried about drawing all this, but I will kind of show where as you do this more and more, you'll start to not need as much when you trace. You'll get to the point where you'll probably want to know where the eyes are and where the highlights and the lowlights are and where the nose is in relation. But then you'll get to the point where you'll be able to do less and less of a drawing, if that makes sense. Okay, so even though this puppy's fuzzy, I don't care. I'm making a solid line because we're not worried about every little hair. We're going to use our paint to do that. I just want to know where my values are, okay? So here's the value line. I've got it lighter here, and then it gets darker. And then I'm going to make this line. Oh, and by the way, you can do this. You can shade. It's like a real pencil. So if you do it like this, or if you do it on its side, you can practice drawing in Procreate as well. So it is a really fun tool. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are not wanting perfection. Now, sometimes it's hard to see what something actually is, and so I'll bring the opacity back just while I draw. So we've got this cute little mouth right there. Got a shadow there, you can put it. And then the top of the head is here. We've got kind of a line here. This one's going to be a really simple workshop. I'm really excited about it. I'll put the link to sign up for this workshop in the description if you're interested. For my pet portraits, I don't do a lot of body. I'll do chest, but it's a portrait. I don't really paint the whole animal. I don't paint bodies and stuff. So if you want that, that's not me. There's plenty of artists out there who offer that. But if you want to check your drawing to see how good it is, you can get rid of the visibility of that layer Look how much simpler that is than if I were to do every little hair. And honestly, these eyes are still a little too complicated. Let's see if we can simplify them at all. Okay, while I have this all, the opacity selected, I am going to show myself where the darkest areas are. Is that drawing? Okay. So this is dark. This is all dark. Okay, let's see if that made a difference. I think that did make a difference, but let me go ahead and, I didn't realize how small my pencil was. I want to make sure that whatever my students are having to trace, that it's as simple as possible. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And then you can also erase. Same. Oh, make sure it's not massive because you don't want to get rid of too much. Okay. I like it. It's simple. It looks creepy. It always does. But now they've got a tracing. So now I can actually download this, save it as a JPEG, save it on my iPad, and then I will rename all of those to send to my students. So they're going to get 3 things. They're going to get this one, and a traceable. And they can put them on their iPhone, their iPad, their computer. They can print them out. I have a lot of students who will do that. My favorite way of tracing has nothing to do with graphite paper. It is an app that I use called DaVinci Eye. There's so many apps out there like it. But it basically uses your phone's camera and it overlays a photo over your camera so that then you can put your phone on a tripod and then you can look at the line drawing while you're actually drawing it, and essentially you trace it. So I'll make a video on that in the future. I do have a video that mentions it and kind of shows how to do it on my channel. I will link to that video. It's one of my first videos, and it's kind of, let's just say it's one of my first videos. So there you have it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. I have no secrets. Like, I am so happy to share all of my processes and just really happy to help everybody else grow as artists and provide options and tools. So anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have any tools that you use or suggestions for me, I'd love to hear them. I'm always open to learning and growing as an artist. Let's share, let's help each other out. Because as they say, when the tide comes in the harbor, all of the boats rise together. So anyway, all right, you guys know that I love you, and I hope you have an amazing day.